Hello, Facebook. So my name, if you have not met me before, is Evin, and I'm here for this week's Michigan Nature Bites. Now, thank you all to everyone that tuned in at 2:30. Now, I know it's 2:45, 15 minutes later, but one of our philosophies with working with wildlife here at the Hell Nature Center is that we never force our animals to do something that they do not want to do. That's why we put so much effort into training and working with them. So I went to grab one of our raptors, Tamale, the red-tailed hawk, and after a couple of minutes of trying to work with her and work through some, stress that she was feeling from something else in the environment, weren't sure what it was, she ultimately gave me the signal that she was done working with me for the day. So we had to go to plan B. And so thank you all for hanging out for just a second. Now, if you've never tuned in to Michigan Nature Bites, we are going to take the next 15 minutes and are going to enjoy a tiny tidbit or morsel of nature knowledge to feed your brain instead of your stomach. Now, I hope you're not trying to eat the computer in front of you. We need to talk about your diet habits at that point if you are. But today's topic is enraptured with raptors. I'll say that again, enraptured with raptors. Because here at the Hell Nature Center, we have the amazing opportunity to care for a large amount of raptors. Now, you might think for a second, wait, no, you don't take care of dinosaurs. This isn't Jurassic Park. You're correct, but you're also not correct because raptors are not extinct. They're not just dinosaurs. Raptors are now known as, or what we call birds of prey. So I'm going to bring out my friend who is joining me today, who is Gilly, the barn owl. So while Tamale, the red-tailed hawk, decided that she was not going to work today, Gilly was more than eager to come to work. So let me grab him out and we'll start talking a little bit more about raptors and the non-dinosaur type. Can you step up? Thank you. Okay. So this very handsome bird is a European barn owl. So I personally have been enraptured, to stick with the theme, with barn owls since I was a kid and actually got to read the series, The Guardians of Ga'Hoole. If you're an owl lover and you've never read that series, I highly recommend it. This is not a sponsored post. This is just me having really enjoyed this book as a teen. And even as an adult, I've gone back and reread them. So barn owls are called raptors along with our other birds of prey because if we take a closer look at those talons, those are their main source of getting their food. And as a matter of fact, raptor essentially means grabbing with their feet. So things like turkey vultures aren't actually a raptor because their feet, not meant for grabbing, more meant for standing because they're eating things that are already dead. So for Gilly, a couple of other factors that play into him being a raptor are the fact that his beak is designed for ripping and tearing. So instead of teeth, because teeth are heavy and birds have to be light for flight, they have these beaks that are specialized for what they eat. So that's why ducks have bills, that's why hummingbirds have those long noses, and why raptors have really sharp, curved beaks so that they can rip apart the food that they eat. And what they're eating is going to be everything from small mice all the way up to maybe a large salmon if you're a bald eagle, or even something like an opossum or a skunk if you're a great horned owl. So for raptors, they are obligate carnivores, and that means that they have to eat meat. So the only time that you're ever going to see a raptor playing with salad is if we were to give it to them to shred, because they do get joy out of that, and it's part of our enrichment that we do with them sometimes. So no vegetarians here. Now for barn owls, I want to highlight a couple of really cool features called adaptations. We've talked a little bit about adaptations on this show before, and they are essentially things about either how they behave or how they look that helps them survive in the wild. So for Gilly, as a barn owl, one of the main adaptations that he has is that he is able to see really well at night. Owls have eyes that are 2/3 the size of their head, or take up 2/3 of their head. So each eye is about 1/3. So if you took your fist and put it in front of your eye, that is about what you'd be looking at. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for a brain. So owls, this whole like them being wise thing, not exactly super accurate. They're very well adapted for hunting at night, but not so much at the brainy stuff. Those are crows, like we talked about when we met Omen. Other things about Gilly that make him an amazing raptor are his kind of dome shape, or is his dome, not dome, satellite shaped face. So his face is designed for funneling sound. And if you were to break it down, he would be able to essentially hear the heartbeat of a mouse from over a mile away. That is an absolutely amazing tidbit in my opinion. So he's almost like our real life Daredevil, the superhero, able to kind of find his way without ever actually having to see. Now barn owls and other raptors need our help too. And that's kind of been a theme of our Nature Bites is here are some amazing animals and then here are things that we can do to help. So for Gilly, barn owls are actually extirpated in the state of Michigan. And what that means is that they no longer live here in Michigan. You can't really find a population of barn owls. You might get one that flies through every once in a while, but since the 1970s, we have not had a breeding pair of barn owls in the state of Michigan. And a large part of that is due to habitat loss. So they do use cavities like barns. In case you were wondering, that is what a barn owl sounds like, and they are potentially the source of the myth of the banshee, because they did like to hang out in graveyards, and if you hear that at night and something white silently swoops past you, I wouldn't necessarily assume it was an owl either. So, because they do live in cavities like our old barns and churches and graveyards and things like that, as we've replaced our older barn structures with things like really clean, really stark pole barns, they don't have as many places to go. But that's not really the reason that they had as much of an issue as they did in Michigan. The bigger issue, as it is with many of our raptors, is rodenticide. So rodenticide is essentially a poison that's meant to help control things like mice, rats, and any other sort of what we consider vermin that end up in our homes or places that we don't want them. But what that means for an owl or another raptor is that that animal is now slowed. It's easier to catch because it's not looking to hide. And over time, if an owl or another raptor eats something that's been poisoned, it will begin to affect the bird. And eventually, it'll cause the bird to die. And that is the real reason that barn owls are no longer found in Michigan. So, something that you can do is if you do have a mouse problem or another rodent problem, there are other ways to get rid of them. One of the most basic is to use a mechanical trap, something like a snap trap that doesn't require any chemicals and instantly kills your rodent. Now, a more creative solution would be to actually try to lure a raptor, or in this case, maybe an owl, into your backyard. So owls have some of the best rates of, yes, I know, you have a feather that is stuck to your chest. But they have some of the best rates of getting rid of rodents. So in studies where they have found the best methods for rodent control, cats obviously do a really good job. But we've talked about the dangers of cats, outdoor cats on other populations other than rodents as well. Outdoor cats are not always the best solution. But an owl is going to be just as good, if not better, at controlling rodents than even if you put out traps. So there's a small tidbit of how you can help raptors and make sure that we are creating a space where we can thrive along with these amazing birds. So I do want to open it up to questions because this is a Facebook Live video, which means that you can interact with me as well. And I'd love to hear anything that you might want to say or ask me about these amazing animals. Nothing yet. So I did find out last week that there's a bit of a lag between what I'm saying live and what you all are seeing. So I did get some feedback that I need to wait a little bit longer between asking questions and going straight forward. So this is me kind of giving you all a little bit of time to catch up to where I am live in the studio. And while we're waiting for a few more questions, or if we have any questions to come through, let me tell you a little bit more about what Gilly's job here at the Hell Nature Center is. So as we've met some of our other animal ambassadors, we've learned that these are small tidbits of knowledge, but they're also based around some of our bigger programs. So this is a small version of what you might hear in our Lords of the Sky program, where you would meet different birds of prey and learn a little bit more about them. Or maybe you want to tune in and join one of our community events. We'll be posting some of those up as well very soon. So I did get the cue that we have some questions, so go ahead and fire away.
Do they live in tree cavities at all?
So before, the question was, do they live in tree cavities? And believe there was a time before human structures, at least to the building type that we're thinking of. So barn owls did not always live in barns, and they did in fact live in hollow trees. So they're not very good at making their own nests. They require either another bird to make it for them, something like a woodpecker, or a naturally hollowed out part of a tree in order to lay their eggs. So those feet are really great for grabbing food, not so great for building nests.
Other than putting up a house, how can I attract screech and barn owls?
The best way really is to provide a habitat for them, but what you can also do is you can, if you have an outdoor animal like a dog or cat, really make sure that you're not letting them out after a certain point, because those animals can seem threatening to an owl that might be trying to figure out if they want to set up in your backyard. But we don't ever recommend you put out food for a wild animal. That teaches them that they don't need to hunt for their own food or forage for their own food. And then that can result in, if you ever stopped giving them that food, them being in a situation where they don't actually have a food source that they can access anymore. I hope that answers your question at least a little bit.
How can we lure raptors to an area?
So again, we're going back to that idea of, the question was, how do we lure raptors into an area? But we're going back to that idea of they need food, shelter, and the proper space for them to be able to do what they need to do naturally. So live in a neighborhood, one of the raptors that you might be able to bring into your backyard is something like a kestrel. Kestrels we've met on this show before, and they're a little bit smaller. They're North America's smallest falcon, and they like to live in cavities as well. So a small kestrel box, and then if you have food in your backyard, aka rodents or other things like that, sometimes songbirds, you'll be able to keep them around. Now, if you don't have food, like let's say your neighborhood has been really, really, really good about eliminating all sorts of small animal life like rabbits and mice, which I don't think there's anywhere like that. But if you have, then you're not really gonna get raptors that stick around because they won't have that essential food source. So, number one, create a shelter for them. Number two, you need to make sure that there are potential for food sources. So if you don't mind having small animals in your backyard, you can have things like brush piles or taller grassy areas where things like rabbits and small mice are likely to take up residence. Outside of that, not a whole lot else we can do to lure them into an environment that's not suited for them. Do we have any other questions?
Are they common in Michigan?
So the question was, are they common in Michigan? If we're talking about barn owls, no, there actually aren't any barn owls left in Michigan. We talked a little bit earlier about them being extirpated, which means that while they were once here, they are no longer here. However, there are other places in the United States that do still have barn owls. So not a total lost cause, just a bit of a rough patch here for them in Michigan.
This could be the last one. How can you encourage owls to hang out near your house?
How can we encourage owls to hang out near your house? I'm going to reiterate a couple of points that I've already made, and the most important thing is making sure that there is a safe habitat for them to be in. And this is most commonly going to take the place, or look like them having some sort of cavity to nest in. So if you have an old tree that has a nice cavity in it, try not to cut it down. That's prime owl habitat. And if you follow us on Facebook, then you probably saw recently that we have a current clinic patient in a screech owl who was living in a hollow in a tree branch that then the homeowners cut down, and that owl came tumbling down with that tree branch. Now, it is likely that the owl will survive, but while the homeowner didn't realize what they were doing, they actually ended up destroying that habitat for that screech owl. So just making sure that there's adequate habitat in the space of cavities, or building nest boxes that you can find usually patterns for online. You can also buy prefabricated ones as well. And the last thing that I'm going to talk about is the reason that Gilly is here with us is he is a mal-imprinted bird, meaning he thinks that he is a person. Because we don't have any barn owls living here in Michigan, we reached out to the World Bird Sanctuary, which has an incredible breeding program that they help to get populations back out in the wild. But because he's a European barn owl, he doesn't really belong out in the wild here. So he has been raised by people from birth specifically to be an education animal. And while it can be tough to tell animal emotions sometimes, he seems to enjoy what he does pretty well. All right. Thank you all. This has been Michigan Nature Bites, and I would love to see you again next week at 2:30 for our next episode. So enjoy this tidbit. We'll see you next time.